Good morning. Um, I don't know if you're like me, but I hate waste, right? I see a lot of where do you see a lot of waste?
In Metro Manila.
Well, that's a different way, yeah. But in restaurants, di ba? Especially if it's buffet, you get a lot, then tingin takaw, then you leave the restaurant, di ba? Normally, ang dami pang pagkain doon sa sa table. In my house, we have this faucet that leaks. Mahina naman. But whenever I see it, I really feel bad. We're trying to fix it. Sometimes the tomato go there, they can fix it. But there's sometimes for a week, it will be leaking. So whenever I see it leak, I can see like 1 peso down, 1 peso down. And I was telling myself, man, what a waste. And in fact, there was one time our bill was like times four of the normal, right? Something like that. And I feel bad. And I remember when that was persisting, I was telling myself, imagine, Bob, you're sleeping and you're wasting a lot of money with that leaking faucet. It's just, okay, I'm throwing your money away, I'm throwing your money away. And I feel bad. And I did a lot of concoction just to solve that because I got bothered to the point that I got an uchu of mine. I was stuffing it in. I was just finding ways just to not waste things. In the office, I hate whenever I tell them, i-print mo nga to. Then they print it in a new sheet. Oh man, why don't you, it's just a scratch. I just review something, you have to print it in the, no, then I always have that, so they know that. But sila naman, yung mga employees, whenever they print things, they print it always in new paper. And it's a waste. I think there's a lot of waste going on. And as much as we feel bad when there are waste, one of the things that we should not waste is our life. If there's something that we should not throw away, or something that should be worthless, or a big waste is, you can waste everything or anything. But what you don't want to waste is your life. If you waste that, man, that's a tragic thing. That's a tragic life. We only have one chance. We only have one life. We have to ensure that that life is not wasted on trivial things, on things that does not matter. It's so easy to be distracted by all the noise, by all the clutters of this world, there's a lot of things pulling us on every side, every direction. But in our passage today, we will see what it takes, what is the mindset, so that our life is not a wasted life. If you look at our life and we assess it, I was just meditating on that. A lot of times people, I'll make that point later. As we continue on the book of Philippians, we know that Paul is in prison 10 years after starting the church in Philippi. And he writes a letter because he heard some news that there are some grumblings happening in the church in Philippi. As great as it is, there are still some tensions going on in that church. And he starts a letter by thanking them. He was telling them, you know what? I thank God. I thank God when I remember you. And whenever I remember you, I pray for you. He was thankful to God because Paul remembers their partnership. Unlike the other churches that Paul established, the partnership with The church in Philippi was different. It was different in a lot of manners. But one of the things that he highlighted in the book of Philippians is their partnership from the very start until now. The church in Philippi never forgot. Their fellowship with them was so strong. Not like sometimes, we enter into a partnership for a moment, a time. But here, Paul was so grateful to them because they were consistent. They never gave up, despite the fact that he was in prison. Especially if you're in prison, right? Normally, ay, nasa kulungan na ating missionary, let's stop giving support. But for Paul, for the people in Philippi, it did not matter. In fact, right, when they were searching Paul, they couldn't find him at the start. And it did not matter that Paul was in prison. In fact, they sent their pastor, Epaphroditus, to encourage him to minister to Paul, to give money to Paul. And Paul, as he thinks of this, he was thankful to God because of that. And he says, my prayer for you, church in Philippi, this love that I'm experiencing from you, this unconditional love that you showed to me, despite the distance of 800 miles apart, despite the fact that we haven't seen each other for 10 years, I pray that your love for God will continually abound. That was the prayer of Paul for the church in Philippi, that their love may abound. And like any good father, Paul was concerned because the church in Philippi was concerned. They were concerned because they know Paul was in jail for about 2 years now and is about to be sentenced. And if things doesn't go his way, he will be put to death. And Paul wanted to cast their fears, put it aside, like a loving father wanting to protect his children from worries, from concerns, from sleepless nights. He tells them, guys, all things is well. I know that the plans of God might seem to be in jail, but everything is good. In fact, thank you. The Praetorian Guards, the very group that's so difficult to reach out to, they're hearing the gospel. They're tied up to me 24/7. It's said that at the very minimum, there are about one that is tied up to Paul, at maximum 2 of them. These Praetorian Guards that was so influenced, that are able in some point to put to throne the next emperor. They became that powerful. And Paul, he was telling, you know what? We're able now to reach this group, the Praetorian Guards. Don't lose heart. And secondly, our fellow believers here in Rome, they're blessed. They're encouraged. They're now emboldened by the life that they see I'm living. They're now emboldened to share the gospel more as they see me faithfully standing for the Lord in the midst of my situation. But Paul knew that not everything is going well. There were some people in the Church of Rome that were sharing the gospel out of envy and strife. They were jealous, as I was mentioning at that time, right? The church in Rome is very fractured. There were about 13 synagogues, depending on what your denomination, depending on what your town that you came from. You have your own group. Parang sa Muntinlupa, kanya-kanyang grupo, taga Cebu, taga Batang Ganto, Batang Tondo. They had their own groupies. And the groupies there were 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 jealous with the popularity of Paul, that they were spreading the gospel in order that their congregation becomes big. For self-promotion. They were doing out of envy and strife, the Bible says. They felt that Paul was a hindrance to their plan of being the head in the church in Rome. In fact, as I was sharing a couple of weeks ago, it is found out through his historical books that chances are it is those Christians who was part of putting Paul to death, a fellow brother. And we saw that. And Paul said something audacious, something unbelievable. He said, as we go look at verse 20, which we looked at last time, according to my earnest expectation and hope, and that I will not be put to shame in anything, but that with all boldness Christ, even now, as always, will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. What Paul is saying here is, it does not matter, brothers. I am not worried. As long as Christ is proclaimed, I'm not bothered if they are maligning me. In fact, I'm not bothered even if I die. As long as Christ is proclaimed. Two of the deepest questions that man ever asked. Two of the difficult questions that is hard to answer. There are a lot of books written about it, yet none seems to clearly explain any of it. And that two questions are, what is the purpose of my life? Diba? We have a lot of books regarding that, pertaining to that. People are always searching for the meaning of life. The age-old question, what is the meaning of my life? And the second question is, if I die, where will I go? Different hypothesis comes out. During the philosophers during the time of Paul believed that the moment you die, it's like a plant dying. You're dead. Nothing happens after that. But here, in verse 21, which is our passage today, Paul answers both those questions in a very crystallized manner. He said, to live is Christ, to die is gain. Two of the most baffling questions that man ever asked is answered poignantly by Paul in just one sentence. To live is Christ, to die is gain. You know what? If you don't adhere to this verse, chances are you're wasting your life. Chances are you're wasting your life. It is one thing to live a life without purpose. I think a lot of people, they live a life without a real purpose. They just go where the wind blows. They just follow the tide. One day it is this way, the next day it is that way. To live a life without purpose